It's now my pleasure to introduce and welcome some families who have gone through gene therapy and can share with us their insights and their advice. So with that, I'd like to start. I'm just going to go ahead and call on Isabel. Are you there? Would you like to introduce yourself? Maybe share just a little bit about you and your child and what why you're here today.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. My name is Isabel. I live in Washington State, about an hour north of the Seattle Children's Hospital, which is where Isaac got Zolgensma. So yes, my son Isaac is 2.5 in this. I'm just smiling so much because I have since I sent this picture, I've cut his little curly, sweet blonde hair, and he just is so cute and goofy in that picture. And he looks like a really big kid now with his big boy haircut. But my son Isaac has SMA. He was diagnosed on the Washington newborn screen, and he received Zolgensma at 11 weeks old because he had elevated AAV9 antibodies, maternal antibodies. And so we went through the whole insurance process, getting him approved for Spinraza and scheduled with the loading doses of Spinraza. And then they rechecked and his antibodies had gone down. And so we had to start over and go through the whole process with Zolgensma. He now has he's asymptomatic for SMA. Here he is on his bike. He continues. We get very good news every time we go to checkups. And what should I share? Should I share more about I'm happy to answer any questions.
We will go ahead and get into questions
Okay. Yeah.
shortly. So we just
Yeah.
wanted to give you a chance to introduce
Okay.
yourself.
That's me.
Yeah, your sweet little one here. So cute. Um, all right. And then is Jamie on? There's Jamie. Hi, Jamie.
Yes, hi. Um, I'm Jamie. My son Chad, he is also about 2.5 now. He receives Zolgensma at 8 months. He also got all of the loading doses for Spinraza and one maintenance dose while we were waiting for his AAV9 antibodies to come down. He has a little bit of weakness in his legs, but he is walking and rolling and crawling and just being a typical 2-year-old. So we're glad about that. We live in Laramie, Wyoming, so we're about 2.5 hours away from Denver Children's Hospital, and that is where he got all of his Spinraza and Zolgensma.
Great. Wonderful. He's a cutie pie. Rosy cheeks. All
Yes.
right. And oops, sorry. I hit the button too many times. Goodness. All right. Jessica, would you like to introduce yourself?
I would. I'm Jessica. I am mom to Deacon. He is now 6. He turned 6 in August. We live in Knoxville, Tennessee. So we actually travel about 5.5 hours up to Nationwide Children's in Columbus, Ohio for treatment. And he received Elevidys earlier this year in August. So we're about 12 weeks post that dose. So he's doing well and well, cutie patootie.
He is. He is. Got such a great smile. And this whole experience is very fresh to you, I'm sure.
Yes, be fresh.
I know Sydney might be joining. I'm not sure if she was able to yet. If she is able to join, we'll take a quick break and let her introduce herself. But for now, why don't we just dive into some questions about your experiences? So we will start with, let me pull up my questions here. How did you first find out about gene therapy? And did you feel like you were well informed as you went forward with that decision, or is there anything you wish you would have known beforehand?
We were diagnosed on a newborn screen through the state of Wyoming. And we had never even heard of SMA till we got our positive. But at the point that we got that, then the neurologist from Children's Hospital, they called us and they talked to us about what our different options were. And because we had to wait for his AAV9s to come down for so long, we got all ready for everything with Zolgensma and then had to switch to Spinraza and then go back. And so we got lots of information. Our team in Denver was really, really helpful. So I don't think we had anything that we didn't get answered before we went.
I can go next. We found out about gene therapy shortly after Deacon was diagnosed. He was diagnosed at 2.5, and we started doing all kinds of researching, care centers and researching different medications, whether they were in the pipeline or already, out there. He actually was on Amondys, which is an exon skipping medication first, because that was the only thing out at the time while we were waiting for the FDA approval of gene therapy. So we knew about it for a while before we were actually able to get it. And then, once it was FDA approved and we were on the list and waiting for his turn to receive it. So we knew about it early on and we're anxiously awaiting it to be something that could be a potential treatment.
We were in the NICU following a traumatic birth injury that was completely unrelated to SMA. And so we happened to be at Seattle Children's already, and when the newborn screen results came back, and the neuromuscular doctor came to our room and told us about the diagnosis and gave us all the information about treatment and everything. And then, in the weeks that followed, we had many appointments and lots of time to ask a lot of questions. I definitely felt like my questions were being answered. With SMA, I didn't feel, I didn't really feel like it was a choice I was opting in for treatment. Of course, we could have chosen to do Spinraza instead, but they were very helpful in, talking us through like why, in what scenario would we not choose to do Zolgensma, and there isn't really one. So yeah, we definitely had all our questions answered, but it was with SMA, it's like you got to move as fast as you can.
Sure. Yeah, that sense of urgency, I think, is big for everyone in the neuromuscular community. Jessica, what factors went into your decision to pursue gene therapy for Deacon?
Sure. So Deacon has Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And like I said, he was on exon skipping medication, it's great. Our neurologist explains the difference though in exon skipping versus gene therapy and the differences in the dystrophin that's created. And so, we weighed those decisions. We weighed the pros and cons of gene therapy. A con was we had to come off of the exon skipping medication that he was on, which we had seen some progress with him being on that, but not, huge gains by any means. And so we weighed the pros and cons, and we also weighed our other treatment options, which for Duchenne, there really aren't any other treatment options at the time. There's stuff in the pipeline, there's stuff, that will hopefully come out in years to come. But we decided, my husband and I, to kind of look at it as what we have now and what we have in front of us. And this was the best option that we have. And you can't, see the future of what will come or what might not come. And if some of the different things that are in the pipelines, hopefully will help him in the future. But right now, that's kind of what led our decision to go ahead and go with Elevidys, is that's what's there. So that's what we chose to go for.
Sure. And Isabel, I know you said you kind of felt like it was that was the only option. Did you feel like you had a moment of like deciding that you were going to do this, and what kind of factors went into that for for both you and for Jamie. Anything kind of strike you as this is what we want to do?
No, there was never, well, I mean, obviously I had to, like authorize I had to say, yes, we're going to do gene therapy, but there was never kind of like I do remember asking the neuromuscular doctor, can you give any reasons why I would choose not to do this? I'm a very anxious person. I have a lot of medical anxiety to begin with. So I definitely asked a lot of questions like, um, something I often ask medical providers is, if this was your child, what would you choose? And it was very clear. It really didn't feel like I was deciding between two things. And it was a total whirlwind. But it just was, I mean, kind of similar to you, Jessica, like that's what's available, and that's giving my child the best chances of a good, healthy life. And that's what we're gonna do.
Sure.
Yeah, and we were pretty much in the same boat as Isabel, where time is of the essence and you really don't get much time to make a choice. But again, what were the alternatives for him to have the spinal injection every 4 months for the rest of his life? Or we go through the gene therapy process where we do that injection once and all of the follow-up, which for us was a no-brainer, kind of. We didn't want to have to deal with it every 4 months when we could deal with the brunt of it for 6 months total and then just continue with follow-up.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about the process. I know insurance can be very challenging. Did any of you experience challenges accessing gene therapy with either insurance or finding the right provider? What solutions, if any, did you find to overcome those challenges?
We were really lucky with the team at Denver Children's Hospital because they helped us fight every denial that we got. So we got a couple. We got one right after he first was diagnosed. They said that he actually didn't have it because they weren't reading the results correctly. So they denied his Zolgensma the first time. And then when we had to go to Spinraza, they denied all of his Spinrazas and they had to appeal it every single time. And then when we were able to finally get ready to be dosed with Zolgensma, that one went through with no issue. So we were on a roller coaster.
Yeah. Sounds like it.
It just is such a roller coaster. Oh, sorry, Jessica, I didn't mean to
That's
step on.
okay. Go ahead.
It just is such a roller coaster. Like we had Spinraza and then Zolgensma both approved, but it is just agonizing waiting for those letters and really infuriating that that's the system that our healthcare system is built on when your child's life is in the balance. So yeah, I would say the process was really frustrating and agonizing, but we didn't have any real hiccups. I did call a lot. I am a proponent of the squeaky wheel. I called the hospital a lot. I called the insurance company a lot. I talked to the Zolgensma rep a lot. Like I just, and I don't think it actually, I don't know, maybe there's an off chance that you can speed things up. It's worth it if you have the energy and the time to make a bazillion phone calls, but it's exhausting and it's really frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely.
I agree with the exhausting and frustrating part of it. We definitely had a long and daunting experience with insurance. It started with denials and just, going through the denials and the appeal process and everything. But even after all of that, we ended up needing to actually switch insurances, which is what eventually got our approval for Deacon. And even after that, it was still quite the process of still, getting denials and appealing them. And then even once it was approved, the contract negotiation between the insurance company and the hospital went on to take a long time. And we were up against the 4 to 5 age bracket that was approved, that FDA approved for gene therapy for Duchenne, for Elevidys. Luckily, I mean, we were right up at it. He was 5, about to turn 6 when the FDA opened it up to all ages. And so that at least took that piece of the stressful, insurance process out of it. But like I said, even once we were approved, we still had to wait for the contract negotiations and everything else. But we had an amazing team at Nationwide who, fought for us. And we also had, little Hercules and lots of different resources that we found that were rooting for us and helping us out in every step of the way. Even though it wasn't easy, we eventually got it. So we're happy to report that, I suppose, but it was definitely a longer process than we ever expected it to be. So
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, that clock ticking, kind of that anxiety from all of that, that's a lot.
absolutely.
Did they give reasons for denials when you got denied treatment?
So for ours, they initially they kept saying that it was still investigational, even though there was an FDA approval, the endpoints had not necessarily been met, that they within certain parts of the trials and different things. So initially it was an issue of still being investigational. And then we had some other issues along the way with self-funded employer plans. And then we had some issues of in-state versus out-of-state once we did a the marketplace exchange plan for him that eventually we were able to get the approval. So we had a few different types of denials along our way. So I think we experienced most of the options. But the appeal process works, and especially if you have people, working at your hospital that can help, that made it a lot more manageable because they do this on a daily basis. So
Sure. Wow. So from the time for Jamie and Isabel, the time that you found out that your child had SMA to the time that they got dosed with Zolgensma, how long was that?
It was 11 weeks, almost exactly for us, because the newborn screen came back on day like 3 or 4 of his, they do it pretty quick. And then, so I guess it was a little bit less than that because he was almost exactly 11 weeks old. But we had gone through 2 insurance approval processes. So I can't remember. I think he was like 5 or no, he must have been 6 or 7 weeks old when the Zolgensma was approved. No, because they scheduled it 4 days. It was about a week after the insurance approval came, that they, ordered and scheduled us for Zolgensma. Maybe a little bit more than a week, maybe about 10 days.
Okay.
And we were in about that same boat. We had to wait for his AAV9s to come down. And then once they did, which was in the middle of December, then it took about a month. And then we got Zolgensma at the end of January.
For those that may not be as familiar with AAV9, can you talk a little bit about that and what that meant? Because they were elevated, you said, and they had to come down.
Yeah, so those were the antibodies that would fight the virus that they used to put the gene therapy into their bodies. So if they had too high of antibodies, they wouldn't put it in because your body would just fight it off. So we had to wait for those to come down.
Okay. We did have a question come in the chat. Did anyone have significant side effects? Did any of your children experience significant side effects after being dosed?
We did not. The blood work is extensive afterwards. You go a lot. Most of our blood work was where the doctors expected it to be along the path. So we never had any major issues. We did stay close to the hospital just in case, because like I said, we're about 2.5 hours away, and I didn't want something crazy to happen and us not be able to get there, because again, we live where there's winter weather and in January and February, you never know what the roads are going to be like. So Chad and I stayed in Denver for about 8 weeks, while my husband and our other child stayed here, because we wanted to make sure that we could get there just in case something happened, because you never know. But
Yeah.
we were lucky and we didn't have any weird side effects.
Isaac's liver enzymes were elevated for a longer time than they had expected. And so we had to do, like, they couldn't decrease the frequency of the lab draws as early as we had hoped. He was only needed to be on the steroids for oh gosh, I can't, it's so strange how this, this was like such a formative experience and now I can't remember details. It's very odd, but he was on steroids not for a long time, but then his liver enzymes remained elevated for a while. So we had to do blood checks for a long time, but they ended up thinking that that he just kept getting colds like right before he would get checked or something. And we tried to isolate from community and family as much as we could, but we also had been alone for so long and we're kind of desperate and had to kind of balance it with our life. So it ended up being fine, but going on longer than we had hoped it would. But other than that, we didn't have to restart the steroids. We didn't have to go to the hospital or anything. They just monitored it longer than we had expected.
Sure.
Yeah, and then we've had some side effects. It's also been the liver enzymes. There's 3 that they check with Elevidys. They check the AST and the ALT, which those can go up and down with infections and illness and things. But the GGT really shows the liver, if it's specific to the liver and not other things going on. And Deacon's GGT went extremely high, like into the 300s, and it needs to be down below 22. So we are still on high dose steroids. We did some IV steroids. That's kind of what worked in the trials. When boys had this happen in the clinical trials, they would give IV steroids and they would see a reduction in the GGT numbers. And so we did that with Deacon. 3 days in a row, we had to do 3 IV steroids of about 250 milligrams each day. And his liver enzymes increased instead of decreased. And so we ended up going back up to Ohio and, seeing them, because we had to stay in Ohio for 30 days, about 4 weeks post-treatment. And so, especially because we live so far away, so we had to stay up there for 30 days. And at 4 weeks, everything was good. It started around 6 weeks that his liver enzymes started going up once we were home. So when the IVs didn't work, we went up to Ohio and, they did some more lab work and increased his daily steroid dose. And we eventually, a couple of weeks later, did see a decline in the liver levels. And so we're now on that decline and starting to slowly wean off of the high dose steroids, which we're thankful for. Hopefully, we keep going in this direction so that we can continue lowering the steroids and also just lowering those liver levels, because that was worrisome, very much so. So
yeah. Did you see side effects in him, like in his behavior or how he felt or anything?
Yeah, so 2 things. One, he was pretty lethargic. The higher it seemed that his liver enzymes were becoming, the more he was just very tired and not really having much energy and not really wanting to do much. But then also, obviously, with the increased steroids, between the IVs and the increased daily steroids, behaviors that can be expected to come along with steroid use. Some, lashing out and getting a little bit of a temper when he's not usually a kid that has one. So we're ready to see those side effects start to kind of go away with the weaning of the steroids. So.
Sure. It sounds like all three of you, especially as moms, and dads too, it's a big emotional roller coaster. What advice might you give somebody to help them be prepared and have the support network that they need to get through it all? Is there anything specifically that helped for you and your family, or?
I just say definitely feel comfortable to ask questions of your provider, especially, for us, we initially expected Deacon would have his gene therapy in the late spring, early summer, to where, he was supposed to start kindergarten in August. And so we never really discussed the part of missing school and things like that, because we didn't think it would be an issue. And so then when we came to it, we were missing school, and then he's had the elevated liver enzymes and everything else. And so just having that clear line of communication of the expectations of, when can he go back to school, or what do these liver enzymes mean, and how is this different than the others? And especially for us, because we live so far away, we had to see our pediatrician weekly for the labs and for just the weekly check-in. And so just be prepared to explain it to people that maybe don't understand gene therapy, because, when we're at Nationwide, we're surrounded by our team that, they know all about all kind of things neuromuscular disease related, but our local pediatrician's office, they don't really understand what gene therapy is, how it works. They know what the orders are from our doctors for them to be, checking different things while we're here, but they don't truly have a good understanding of his diagnosis or of gene therapy or of the follow-up and what it all means. And so just be prepared to maybe educate them a little bit, which sounds silly and, odd, but at first I was frustrated, and then I was like, well, it's not, they see all kinds of general, medical needs, not specific to this. And so, whenever a physician would be out, we'd have to see another one and explain it, or when we had to go to the ER and had to explain it, just be prepared that not everyone, locally, especially if you have to do that, it can be frustrating, but you also want to make sure they understand and get the whole picture. So.
Sure.
I would agree with that. Get ready to explain it to everyone. And then I would say, when I was able to find like Facebook groups or the MDA support groups or things like that for my specific, what we were going through, that helped immensely. Because we're in Wyoming in the middle of nowhere, and we are probably the only case of SMA that our doctor has ever seen. And so we kind of felt like we were out on an island by ourselves.
Yeah.
So finding the support groups and finding the Facebook groups was extremely helpful, because you could go in there and you could search whatever question you had. There was someone who probably already had that question, and it was already answered by people who've gone through it. So that to me was really helpful. And also being able to talk to your family and your friends, and having my husband, honestly, because it was a lot.
That's probably an understatement. It's more than a lot. It's life-changing. So those Facebook groups. And yes, MDA does have a community group. We'll put some information about that in the chat too, if anybody is interested in joining that. Isabel.
Yeah, I highly recommend joining the community group. Just feeling like you're not alone is really powerful during such an isolating and scary time. I wish they had existed when we got our diagnosis, but I have since joined, and it's great. And my other advice is to have mental health care for yourself, because you'll be doing a lot of appointments, advocacy, phone calls, stressing, all the things for your kid, and having something in place to take care of yourself is really important too.
Absolutely. 100%. Um, Jessica, you brought up about having to talk to other people about gene therapy, and I know there's a lot of maybe myths going around about gene therapy, and just how do you talk to somebody about it and make sure that they understand that it's not a cure. And so I guess if there's any examples you can share or suggestions on how to best talk about it with grandpa or with brothers and sisters or just anybody. How did you approach that?
Yeah. So we have a 10-year-old daughter as well. And so, I feel like we definitely with her had to explain that, we hope to see some increase in strength and stamina and things of that nature, but that it's not a cure. And then in talking to our family and friends about it, we use more kid-friendly terms when discussing it with Emily, of course, our daughter, but when talking with friends and family about it, again, a lot of them have done as much research as, someone not in the midst of it, would do, but explaining that it is not a cure, but that we're hoping, in our case anyway, we're hoping, maybe it buys some time until the next, best thing comes along or whatever, because I've had a lot of people be like, well, if it's not a cure, why are you doing it? And we're like, well, because it can give, some benefits for sure. I mean, I don't know. And when we did our follow-up appointment, actually this past Monday, and he gained 7 points on his North Star assessment, which is amazing. But then when you say that to people who, what's a North Star? So just, not feeling frustrated or anything, explaining, especially to, like I said, our parents who are like, oh, they don't quite grasp it and they think that, everything's going to be just fine afterward. And we're like, well, we hope to see some improvement, but it's not going to be a cure. And then, like I said, the doctors, they would ask, so when is his next gene therapy infusion? And it's like, well, they use a virus that then has antibodies. So it's really a one-time dose for this, but we're hopeful, things may be coming in the future, yada, yada, So just keeping an open mind and not being frustrated is something that I've really tried to focus on, just so that I'm not just like, every time someone asks and doesn't understand and everything else, like it's an opportunity to explain it to them, to explain more about Duchenne, to kind of advocate a little bit, to maybe get them on board for advocating and understanding the disease more and understanding what treatments are out there is kind of how our family has tried to look at it, to be able to kind of educate others what it is and what's going on, rather than just giving a quick answer and just being like done with it and not wanting to talk about it anymore. So we've kind of tried to look at it that way, just because it can be frustrating, but
Sure.
I don't want to look at it that way.
No, I think it's great that you use that as an opportunity to educate and advocate and empower people. Isabel or Jamie, any experiences with having to kind of share about this with your other family members and their reactions and how you approached it with them?
So for us, no one had ever heard of SMA or anything like that. So I kind of just went on the Facebook page, on my page, and just made a post about Chad has this genetic disorder. Here's the gist, basically. And if you want more information, then I sent them to curesma.org, because I'm not an expert. I'm barely learning about this too. And then as we got closer to doing the gene therapy part, Novartis they have like a YouTube video kind of explaining how it works. So I also posted that to my Facebook page. But it is, like Jessica was saying, it is a little bit frustrating when people are like, well, he's going to be fine now, right? Well, I mean, hopefully, but like, we don't really know.
Yeah.
It's going to depend on what kind of symptoms he had when he was dosed and how far the progression of his disease was before he was dosed. And we really don't know. So
Sure.
it's hard to give people that answer, because that is not the answer they're looking for.
Yeah. No, you are pioneers in this space, and don't know the outcome 100%. So it's very brave, and I think wonderful that you're educating others. How about you as well?
I didn't do too much. I had an article, I think a doctor friend of mine sent to me or something, and I shared it, or I don't know. But I didn't do very much. I would agree that it feels really dismissive when people people just didn't understand that it was kind of an ongoing trauma and loss. And so I did feel conscious of feeling like I was, still dealing with it or still grieving or, because it's not just a silver bullet, even though, of course, we're so grateful that it exists and that we were able to have access to it. But I didn't do too much educating. I was not able to.
And that's okay too. I think, it's also okay to keep it close to the vest, and
Yeah,
it's a very personal experience.
Yeah, my dad he's retired now, but he was a professor of public health, so he has, kind of the science research brain, and he did a good job of like reading up on SMA and Zolgensma, and then sharing that at least like with our family, and so that was really helpful. I tend to be, if I have a headache, I'm not going to Google headache on WebMD. And it was kind of a similar thing. I didn't want to read about it. I didn't want to be in a worse space mentally than I already was. So I let other people do the Googling and the research. And I just kind of like did what our doctors advised us to do.
Yeah, I think that's smart too, to bring in a team with you that can help you field those questions. If it's your dad that could field the questions that were coming in and explain things. So as mom, you had enough on your plate with that. So that's good advice too, to kind of build your community. Make sure you have people you can talk to and people that can help you, and let them help you too. When people ask what they can do, actually let them help you, which isn't always easy. But all right, we'll probably just do a couple more questions here. Tell me a little bit about post-treatment. What kind of gains or changes have you seen for your child, and kind of just how you're feeling about that now that the treatment phase is kind of done?
For us, we pretty much noticed gains within the first couple weeks for Chad. Like having better tummy time, because at first he couldn't even hold his head up, like he couldn't lift it up off the ground. He wasn't sitting up by himself. He wasn't trying to roll really before the treatment. And then once we got the treatment, a couple weeks later, he started to slowly try to roll, which was really cool to watch. And then him being able to just watching the difference in leg and core strength, because he couldn't pull his legs up either. So like normal newborns pull their legs up, playing with their feet, putting it in their mouths, whatever. He couldn't get his legs up enough to do any of that. But then after treatment, he started being able to do all of that as well. And it was really cool to see the progress and how quickly it happened, because I don't think we were expecting it to work as fast as it did.
That must have been very validating and exciting to kind of feel like, you made this big decision and now you're seeing the fruits of that. So that's wonderful.
Yes.
We didn't, Isaac has 3 copies of SMN2 and he was asymptomatic at the time of treatment and continued to develop normally. So we never saw anything, which is pretty amazing.
Good too. Yeah, I was gonna say that's great and amazing, wonderful.
Yeah. So I guess prior to treatment, Deacon was really having a hard time with stairs, especially. We carried him up and down the stairs. He didn't even really attempt that anymore. Jumping was really hard for him, obviously running and all the things. But we had his 12-week post appointment on Monday, and PT was a part of that, as well as cardiology and just a regular checkup. But part of the North Star assessment that they do, he has to run a 100-meter, like down and back. And his previous score was like 80 seconds or so for the 100-meter. And this week on Monday, it was 53 seconds. So, I mean, that's a huge drop in time, which is a huge deal whenever, it's always been, so high. So we're happy to see that. And then he was able to stand on one foot, both feet, and balance for 3 seconds, which he's never been able to do. And then in addition to that, he was able to hop on one foot and hop on the other foot, which he's never been able to do. So we're seeing improvements. Granted, he's also still on high-dose steroids, so that can be a factor that helps too. But I feel like we're seeing some significant improvements now that we're here at week 12. We didn't see anything really up until the last, I would say, couple of weeks. But it's super exciting to see it, whatever the cause and whatever is leading up to it. Like I said, he was also on exon skipping medication before, but that improvement has been since starting Elevidys 12 weeks ago when they did the baseline PT assessment. So something's doing something, so we're happy to see it. And it makes, the liver and all the worries and all the things a little lighter to see those results on Monday and to see him beaming. He was so excited and so proud of himself to do it too. So it was good.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I'm sure that helped to make it all the ups and downs you went through a little better. Well, I'm just looking through some other questions here, and we have had in the Q&A just people saying thank you for sharing your stories. I think hearing your perspectives is so powerful and so helpful to people. In terms of where you went, I know each of you were at larger hospitals, and Jamie, you being in Wyoming, you traveled to larger hospitals. What factors went into where you decided to go? So kind of similar to what we've talked about with Dr. Panda today, how did you choose where to go for therapy or for gene therapy treatment?
For us, it really was just suggested to us to go to Denver Children's Hospital because it is the closest place to us. Our other option was in Salt Lake City, Utah, which is like 6 hours from us. But I think Children's Hospital Colorado is an SMA. They're an SMA clinic, so like they have specialized in SMA stuff. So we just were told to go there, and that's where we went.
Fair enough.
Yeah, ours is pretty similar. There was not really a deciding time. It's empty. We have a SMA doctor, Dr. Perlman and Dr. Enriquez are both at Seattle Children's. And that it was just like, we'll schedule it kind of thing.
Yeah. And didn't feel like you had to doubt that at all because they had such a good reputation. And
exactly.
They answer all your questions, and they had the experience. So what about you, Jessica? How'd you decide?
Yeah, so for us, there are some, we have some MDA care centers that are a little bit closer to us that we looked into, but we saw all the research happening at Nationwide and, really felt comfortable with their level of just care and understanding. And like Vanderbilt's close by, and it's also that was our other where we were kind of going back and forth between, and we ended up just landing because even for us, Vanderbilt is still a few hours away. So we thought maybe we would just add the couple of extra hours to get, where we know there was a lot of research going on and just had read a lot of good things. And that's kind of what helped make our decision. We figured we were going to have to travel regardless, so we chose to go to one of the top, it's Duchenne certified care center and all of that good stuff. So that's what helps to make our decision.
Well, I think in terms of, I feel like I could ask a whole lot of other questions, but I want to be respectful of time. And if anybody else had any other questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A. But to close us out, if there were families on the phone here that are interested in pursuing gene therapy or thinking about it, what advice would you give to those people, to a parent or a caregiver or a person living with neuromuscular disease? What advice would you give?
I would just, oh, sorry, go ahead, Jamie.
Nope, you can go. You're good.
I was just going to say, I think I would just advise asking a lot of questions beforehand and making sure you get the answers to your questions, and just, doing your research and knowing that there's a lot involved with it. There's follow-up appointments and follow-up visits, and it's not just like I think I heard Dr. Panda say, it's not just like a one quick thing and you're done. It's a process, and but it's also a big deal of what you're putting into their body to help fix and it's a big deal basically. And so there's a lot that goes into it before and after, and just kind of being mindful of that, and having an open mind to, it's not just, you do it on this date and it's done. Because it can be a roller coaster. There can be a lot to it, and it's worth it, I think, but definitely keeping an open mind to all of that.
Yeah, I was just going to say, asking a lot of questions and being prepared for the follow-ups and the blood draws and all of that, because it is hard and it's grueling. And like for us with little tiny babies, getting their blood drawn, it was a lot and was kind of hard, but again, it is worth it. It has 100% been worth it. To see Chad walking when we didn't know if he would ever be able to do it, sorry to get emotional, but is crazy. It's so great. So definitely worth all of the hassle and the scariness, for sure.
My advice is to take care of yourself as best as possible, and to use your support network as much as you can. When we had first thought we needed to do Spinraza, I had a friend scheduled to go on a walk with me during his first spinal tap, because there was no way I was going to be able to be in the room for that. My husband was the one who took him to the blood draws because I couldn't manage that. I think there's a lot, especially as moms, there's a lot of pressure and perfectionism. And I think using your support network as much as you can, people want to help. And if you have a way that you can actually ask for help, people will show up.
I love that. I think those are all great words of advice to end with here, especially taking care of yourself and just being prepared, because it is a big investment, obviously a very worthwhile and important one. But well, thank you, Isabel and Jessica and Jamie, for spending your time with us this evening or afternoon. We really appreciate it, and just appreciate your candidness and sharing about your sweet little ones. And we're glad to hear that on the most part, things are going well. So thank you for being here. And with that, I'm just gonna share some resources before we end our webinar today. We do have a new document that's available to download on our website. It's about how to navigate insurance for gene therapy, and it'll take you through step-by-step how to handle appeals and all that stuff. So a good resource there. We'll put it in the chat, but you can also scan the QR code or find it on mda.org. With that, I also wanted to let everybody know that MDA has a gene therapy support network. With this, it comes with virtual learning, like the series we've done today and our educational materials. We also have an access workshop, which is a self-paced module. You go through and just learn about the different aspects of gene therapy and what's involved and what to consider. And that's available on demand whenever you need it. And then most importantly, we have gene therapy support specialists that are available to do a one-on-one video call or a phone call and help you find resources and information and answer your questions. So we encourage you to reach out to us. We'll put that phone number and email in the chat, but would love to hear from any and all of you. Again, the Gene Therapy Learning Series Part 1 and Part 2 is up on our YouTube channel, so feel free to check that out. We talked more about specifics around Duchenne treatments, but then also gave a great overview of what's in the pipeline and what is coming down for other neuromuscular diseases. A couple of our panelists mentioned our community groups. These are supportive groups. They're all virtual, and they just provide a safe place for people in the neuromuscular disease community to gather and exchange information, exchange resources. So we have groups for gene therapy, but we also have a group for parents, an adult group, and a group for individuals living with ALS. And again, we encourage you to join our community. If you haven't done so already, you can get the latest information and research about clinical trials. We can also send out Quest Magazine, and there's just opportunities to connect and get more involved and join these types of webinars with us. So please take the survey at the end of this webinar. It will pop up right as you close out. We love to hear your feedback. We want to know what you liked, what we can do differently, what other topics you'd like to discuss. Your feedback's very important to us. And so also, if you have questions, looking for support, looking for our Gene Therapy Support Network, please call our resource center at the number there, 1-833-ASK-MDA1, or you can email us at resourcecenter@mdausa.org. I'd like to thank Dr. Panda and also thank our panelists for being here tonight, for sharing their expertise and their experiences. And with that, this concludes today's webinar. Thank you for joining us and have a great evening.